Shomru b'nei Yisrael Emes HaShabbos V'asois es HaShabbos.
Good morning. Happy day after Yom Kippur. And we're learning now Mesilas Yesharim, the path of the just. Let's not let the inspiration stop on Yom Kippur, but let's actually try to better ourselves and act out those promises we made to Hashem and trying to become better Jews. So we're on chapter 25 of Mesilas Yesharim, Path of the Just, which is page 496 in the Art Scroll. And this is the B'derech Kinyas Hayira, how to acquire fear of Hashem. In the last chapter, we talked about different types of fear of Hashem. We said the most basic type is a fear of punishment, which most people can attain to some level. And then we get to levels of fear of Hashem, which are a little harder to get. One level is fear of Hashem's awesomeness, to understand who God truly is and to fear Him. And the other is fear of sin, to be so afraid of doing something against God or not honoring Him the proper way that a person lives with that fear and that fear of His awesomeness. Now, we mentioned that the last two are difficult to attain. It really takes a lifetime. And now in this chapter, we're going to discuss more about how to achieve those lofty levels of fearing Hashem. And actually what he's going to say here really applies to most of the character traits and the spiritual levels that we want to attain. He's going to tell us how to do that, because we all made these resolutions on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, about how we want to become better. So how do we actually achieve them, right? We're probably going to most of us get a little disappointed because we realize what we wanted to do, it's a lot harder. And practicality to actually follow through on a New Year's resolution, whether it's trying to lose weight or whether it's trying to attain lofty spiritual levels. So let's see how to do that. Says the Ramchal, first thing he says, contemplation, thinking. This is something that most humans don't do anymore, called thinking, to sit and think. And he says when it comes to fear of Hashem, we have to think about two true ideas. Ha'echad, hu hayos shchinaso yizbarach, nimtzeis b'chol makom shebe'olam, v'shehu yizbarach mashkiach al kol davar katan v'gadol, ein nisteri mi neged einav. The first is to realize that God's presence is everywhere in the world, and that nothing is hidden from Him, whether it's a small or a small thing or a great thing. Lo mipnei gadol hanaisei v'lo mipnei pri suso. Not a great thing, it's not hidden from Him, and also lowly things, because of their lowliness, they're not hidden from Him. Ela hadavar gadol v'davar katon, whether it's big, whether it's small, hanikle v'hanichbad, whether it is a noble thing or something on a lower level, who roev who maven, God sees and understands b'li hefresh, without any distinction. Humasha amra kasav, this is what the verse says, Malich halaretz kvodo, the world is full of Hashem's glory. Ve'omer, and it says, Halo es hashemayim v'es haaretz ani maleh, the heavens and the earth I fill. So the first thing when it comes to fearing God, is to realize that God is everywhere. Now, it doesn't mean just knowing that. We all intellectually know it, but really feeling it. And the way we get to that, and the way we get to any improvement in our character, is by contemplating it, by constantly thinking about it. It also says, V'aymer mika Hashem Elokeinu hangmila shaves, who is like our Hashem, our God, who is enthroned on high, hamashpili liros b'shemayim v'aretz, yet while He's enthroned on high, He still brings Himself down, quote unquote, to look at our world, look at the heavens and the earth. So there's those two aspects of Hashem, that Hashem is beyond their comprehension, and He is on high, but on the other hand, He also relates to us. V'aymer, and it says, Kiram Hashem v'shafal yira v'gavoa memerchak v'yeda. Hashem is exalted, He notes the lowly, and the high one makes Himself known from afar. So that means God is everywhere. That means wherever we stand, we're in front of Hashem. So a person should automatically, if he's standing in front of God, be nervous that that you might do something wrong. Right? If you were in front of a king, you wouldn't want to violate the law right in front of the king. That would be very bad. So he says, we're always in front of Hashem. So we should be very careful not to violate what he says. That we shouldn't do anything, actually, that wouldn't be fitting for Hashem's exaltedness. V'humasha amru, what's what it says. Dam alamala mimcha, know what's above you. Ayin roa v'ozen shamas. What's above you is a eye that sees and an ear that hears. V'chol maasecha b'sefer nichtavim, and everything you do is written in a book, as we know from Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Ki kevan shehashgachas HaKadosh Baruch Hu al kol davar, since Hashem's oversight is on everything. V'hu kol, and he sees everything. V'shomea hakol, and he hears everything. V'adai shekol ha'maisim yu oisim roshim. For sure, every deed has an impact. V'kulam nichtavim b'sefer im l'schosim l'chova, and everything we do gets written down, whether it's a good thing we did or a bad thing we did. There's nothing hidden from Hashem. V'amnam hadavar hazeh einu mitztar heita b'seir. However, this is a big however. This idea that Hashem is next to us at all times is not something which is easy for the mind to imagine. How do you do it, right? You say Hashem's next to you. Okay, right, I believe it, I know it, but to really, really feel it, it's very difficult. So how do you get there? How do you get to a point where you live with the feeling that God is right next to you, God is everywhere all the time? It comes through constant contemplation and reflection and intense reflection. Since this idea is very far from our senses, our physical senses, it's only possible for us to imagine it and to visualize this after a lot of practice. And even once we get to the point where we can understand this and we can visualize it and we can feel that God is with us, it's very easy for it to go away. And we'll find, just like the way to acquire fear of Hashem takes a lot of contemplation. How does one lose it? Is by ceasing that contemplation. So a person might think that, once I got to the level of fearing Hashem, that I don't have to keep on going over it. I understand it, and I could stop learning about it. But the truth is that once you stop learning about it, it's going to go away. Right? It's like lifting weights. If you get to a point where you're building up and lifting more and more weights, so you're bench pressing 250 pounds, whatever it is, if you stop practicing, you're not going to be able to bench press 250 pounds. You're going to go back to 150. Whether he voluntarily does it or he's just too busy. Anytime a person stops this contemplation, it will cease. It will affect his ability to have that constant fear of Hashem. This is what Hashem said to the king of Israel. You should have a Torah and you should read it all the days of your life. In order that you learn to fear Hashem. He tells the king of Israel, who was responsible for guiding the Jewish people to follow the Torah, he's commanded to have a Torah with him and to always study it. We find that getting to fear of Hashem is only somebody who was constantly studying it and constantly reviewing it. It was Daktek Sha'amar, and we could see from the verse, it says, Laman Yilma Liyira, in order that you learn to fear. The verse that we just read doesn't say in order to fear Hashem, it says in order to learn to fear. Because this fear of God that we're talking about, it doesn't come to a person naturally. On the contrary, it's very difficult to get to because of our physicality. So it only comes through study. And the only way that a person can study fear of God is through constant contemplation in the Torah and the ways of the Torah without interruption. A person contemplates this and looks into it, investigates it in depth, tamid, b'shivto, all the time, when he's sitting, b'lechto, when he's walking, b'shach, when he's lying down, b'kum, when he gets up, until he affixes in his mind the truth of this. The hainu, that is, emitis, himatzeh, shchinaso yizbarach, b'chol makom, that we find that God is everywhere. God's presence is everywhere. V'yosenu amdim l'fanav mamish, and we literally stand in front of him at all time, b'chol esu b'chol sha'ah, v'azira oso b'emes. And then we will have true fear of him. This is what King David prayed and said, Hareni Hashem darkecha, Hashem, show me your ways, ahalich mamitecha, that I should go I should go with you in truth, yachi levavi liira shemecha, and set for my heart fear of your name. So what the Ramchal is telling us is really the guide to all spiritual growth, is that it has to be done on a constant basis. That's why in yeshivas there's a Musar Seder. Every day the students study Musar, study ethical texts like Mesilas Yesharim, like we're doing now, every single day for a few minutes. Because like the Ramchal is saying, if you don't constantly do it, then you're going to lose it, especially because spiritual growth in certain areas, especially about fearing Hashem and realizing that God is constantly around us, this is something which doesn't naturally come to a person. To grow, spiritual growth is not something which comes naturally unless we work on it. And this aspect here of knowing that Hashem is all around us, that's something which our physical senses can't perceive. We can't see God, we can't hear God, we can't smell God. So the only way to do it is through growth, this constant contemplation of these spiritual ideas. So a very good idea after coming off of Yom Kippur, we only study Mesilas Yesharim, the path of the just, once a week. But to take 5 minutes a day and to either, whether it's Mesilas Yesharim or to take an area of spiritual growth, if you have a certain area and are looking for a text on what could help you in that specific area, please feel free to reach out and give me a call, send me a text or an email. We can discuss. But the idea is to constantly, every day, 5 minutes a day, to study Torah, to study an ethical text, because whatever level we're going to grow, if we stop doing it, as the Ramchal is saying, we are going to go back to where we started, because spiritual growth is something that takes work, and it can be against the natural physical drives of a person to be lazy and whatnot. And fine. So wishing everyone a great Shabbos and a Chag Sameach.